They say empires are built with armies. Rome had its legions. Britain ruled the seas with its navy. America projects power with its aircraft carriers. But China is building an empire without firing a single shot. No soldiers, no tanks, no invasions. Instead, it uses debt, loans that look generous, projects that look like gifts, contracts that look like opportunity. Billions flow into highways, ports, railways, and power plants. And leaders smile at the ribbon cuttings, thinking they've won. But here's the twist. That money doesn't come free. Because when the projects fail to pay for themselves, and they often do, the bill comes due. And when nations can't pay, China takes something else. Strategic ports, mines, influence. This isn't just lending, it's leverage. And it's spreading across the world, from Asia to Africa to Europe. So the real question is this: is China buying the world with debt? In 2013, China's President Xi Jinping announced something bold, a plan so big, so ambitious, it was compared to the ancient Silk Road. They called it the Belt and Road Initiative. On the surface, it sounded simple and even inspiring. China would fund and build infrastructure all over the world, highways across Africa, railways through Asia, power plants in the Middle East, and ports in Europe. Billions of dollars poured into projects that promised growth, jobs, and development. For countries struggling with poverty or crumbling infrastructure, it looked like a miracle. Western banks and institutions often said no. But China? China said yes. No lectures about reforms, no endless conditions, just money, fast, easy, and huge. To leaders desperate for results, it felt like a golden ticket. But what many didn't realize was this: the ticket had fine print, and hidden in that fine print was the real cost of China's generosity. So how does China's debt trap actually work? It starts with a loan. A government signs a deal. Billions are promised. China sends its money, and construction begins. But here's the first twist. The projects are almost always built by Chinese companies, with Chinese workers, using Chinese materials. So a lot of that money, it never even leaves China. Then comes the second twist. The loans look cheap, but they're often loaded with hidden terms. Short repayment deadlines, high interest if you're late, and clauses that hand control to China if things go wrong. And here's the problem. Many of these projects don't make money. A shiny new port, but no ships. A railway, but no passengers. A power plant, but no demand. Debt piles up. The country can't pay. And that's when the real trap snaps shut. Because if you can't pay with cash, China takes something else. Let's look at how this trap plays out in real life. Take Sri Lanka. The government borrowed heavily from China to build Hambantota Port, a massive harbor meant to attract global trade. But the ships never came. The port lost money, and when Sri Lanka couldn't pay the debt, China didn't forgive it. Instead, it seized the port, leased for 99 years, a strategic foothold in the Indian Ocean, gained without a single soldier. Now look at Zambia, a country rich in copper, desperate for infrastructure. China stepped in with loans for roads, railways, and power plants, but the debts ballooned. Today, much of Zambia's mining revenue is locked up in repayments. The people see little benefit, while Beijing gains leverage over the nation's resources. And it's not just the global south. Even Europe has felt it. Greece, drowning in debt after the 2008 crisis, sold a majority stake in the port of Piraeus to a Chinese state-owned company. Now, one of Europe's most strategic harbors is effectively in Beijing's hands. Different countries, different continents, but the pattern is the same. Debt becomes dependence. Here's the question most people ask. If the trap is so obvious, why do countries walk right into it? The answer is simple: desperation. Many nations in Africa, Asia, and even parts of Europe are drowning in poverty, crumbling roads, and unreliable power grids. They need money, fast. So where do they go? The International Monetary Fund or the World Bank? Maybe. But those institutions come with long strings attached, strict reforms, spending cuts, years of painful adjustments before a single road gets built. China? China plays a different game. It offers money quickly. No endless debates, no lectures about democracy or corruption, just cash, shiny blueprints, and a promise of progress. For politicians, it's irresistible. They get to cut the ribbon, take the photo, and claim victory. The debt problems? Those come later. And by the time they do, it's someone else's problem. That's why so many leaders say yes, even when the fine print screams no. But here's the twist. This isn't just about roads and bridges. It's about something far bigger. Here's the part most people miss. China isn't just building roads, ports, or power plants. It's building influence. Think about it. If your country owes Beijing billions, who do you listen to at the United Nations? Who do you rely on for trade deals? And when push comes to shove, who do you dare not anger? This is the genius and the danger of China's debt strategy. It's not about owning one project. It's about owning the leverage. Ports in Sri Lanka, railways in Africa, energy grids in Eastern Europe. They're not random investments. They're pressure points. A port today can become a naval base tomorrow. A loan today can become a political favor tomorrow. And slowly, one contract at a time, China shifts the balance of power without firing a single shot. But here's the cliffhanger. What happens when those loans can't be paid back? When the bills come due and the debtor nations realize they're cornered? Here's the brutal truth. Loans always look easy until it's time to pay them back. And with China's Belt and Road loans, the fine print often hides sharp teeth. High interest rates, short repayment windows, collateral clauses buried in the paperwork. Take Sri Lanka. When it couldn't repay its massive debt, it handed over control of Hambantota port to China on a 99-year lease. Think about that. A sovereign nation gave away a critical port, not through war, but through debt. And Sri Lanka isn't alone. Countries across Africa, Asia, even Europe now owe billions they can't repay. Some are restructuring, some are begging for extensions. But the leverage is the same. Beijing holds the keys. This is the real trap. Debt doesn't just vanish. It piles up, it compounds. And then one day, the bill arrives. And when it does, nations don't just lose money. They lose control. But here's the chilling question. If China can take ports and railways, what else could be up for grabs? For years, the Belt and Road looked unstoppable. Country after country signed deals, took the money, and smiled for the cameras. But then, the cracks started to show. Ports in debt, railways half-finished, power plants bleeding money. And suddenly leaders realized this wasn't aid. This was leverage. The United States began warning allies. Don't fall into China's debt trap. The European Union launched its own initiative, promising clean infrastructure loans. India started investing in its neighbors, countering Beijing's reach. Even some Belt and Road members themselves began to push back. Malaysia canceled billions in projects. Italy is debating whether to withdraw from the program altogether. But here's the twist. Every cancellation, every renegotiation, every warning is proof of how much power China has already gained. You don't panic about something weak. You panic about something strong. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. If the world is pushing back, does that mean a collision is coming? So here we are, a world being reshaped, not by tanks rolling across borders, not by bombs dropping from the sky, but by contracts, by promises, by debt. The Belt and Road isn't just about building ports, railways, or power plants. Number. Each project is a chess piece. And Beijing is playing a very long game. The real question is this: how far does it go? Do countries keep taking the money, knowing full well it could cost them their independence? Or does the backlash grow until nations finally push back and say, enough? History whispers a warning here. Empires built on debt rarely end peacefully. Colonial powers once used credit to dominate entire continents until resentment exploded. And if the pattern repeats, the fallout might not stay economic. It could trigger conflicts that redraw the global map of power itself. But let's bring it closer to you, because this isn't just about faraway countries signing billion-dollar deals. It's about the world you live in, the prices you pay, the alliances your leaders make, and the debts that shape your future. whether you agreed to them or not. Because here's the truth. When nations fall into a debt trap, it's not governments that suffer. It's their people, ordinary families, people like you and me. So the next time you hear words like development loan or infrastructure investment, remember this: money always comes with strings attached. And sometimes, those strings can tighten into chains. If this gave you a new perspective, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe. This is Economic Chronicles, where history exposes the present, and the future is written in the lessons we refuse to learn.